Accidental affair, she woke up next to the CEO. Now her life will never be the same. Before we continue, please remember to like, share and subscribe. The night began like any other Friday in the city of Atlanta, bright lights, clinking glasses, and the hum of conversations floating over jazz music. In the heart of a stylish downtown bar, Amelia sat tucked in a corner booth with her friends. Normally reserved and practical, tonight she'd allowed herself a small rebellion against her usual routine. Work had drained her, life had worn her thin, and her friends had insisted she needed a break. She hadn't planned on talking to anyone new. She certainly hadn't expected him. A few stools away at the bar, a man watched the room with quiet amusement. He was tall, dressed sharply, but carried himself with a calm assurance rather than flash. When their eyes met, it wasn't dramatic. Just a glance, a flicker. But something about it lingered. He ordered a drink and, with a charming nod, had another sent to her. She hesitated. Then smiled. Daniel, he introduced himself when he joined her table. His voice was smooth, confident, but not arrogant. Amelia responded with her name, and soon the two had slipped into a rhythm, talking, laughing, and finding an easy comfort in each other's company. He asked thoughtful questions, listened closely, and laughed in all the right places. For once, Amelia didn't feel like she had to shrink herself or play a part. With him, she simply existed, and that felt extraordinary. Hours passed like minutes. The group dwindled until it was just the two of them. One drink became two, then three. The city blurred outside the windows, and suddenly they were in the back of a cab, her hand in his, sharing stories under the streetlights. By the time they reached the hotel, Amelia's nervousness had softened into something braver. The night that followed was both a blur and vivid in pieces, his hand tracing her collarbone, her laugh echoing in the room, the sound of rain against the window. It was wild and tender and unlike anything she had ever allowed herself before. When Amelia woke, the sun had just begun to peek through the curtains. The space beside her was empty. For a moment, she wondered if it had all been a dream. But then she saw the folded note resting on the pillow. Her name wasn't on it. Just a simple message, scribbled in neat handwriting. Last night was unexpected. D. No phone number. No explanation. No goodbye. She sat there, the sheet clutched to her chest, her mind spinning with questions. It wasn't just the absence that confused her, it was the lingering sense that this hadn't been meaningless, at least not to her. She had no idea that the man she had shared the night with, this quiet, intriguing Daniel, was none other than Daniel Blackwood, the elusive CEO of Blackwood Enterprises. A man known for his influence, his power, and his silence. And Amelia? She was about to walk straight into his world, without even realizing it. Monday arrived with the usual city buzz, honking cars, caffeine-fueled commuters, and Amelia's heart pounding like a drum inside her chest. She stood outside the towering glass building of Blackwood Enterprises, clutching her sketchbook like a shield. Today marked the beginning of a huge opportunity, a high-stakes branding project that could elevate her career overnight. She had prepped all weekend, pored over designs, polished her portfolio. What she hadn't prepared for was what, or rather, who, was waiting inside. The receptionist offered her a polite smile and a visitor's badge before directing her to the 18th floor. Amelia smoothed her blouse, took a breath, and stepped into the sleek conference room, trying to steady her nerves. Then she saw him. At the head of the table sat the man from that night. The man who had bought her a drink, made her laugh, kissed her like she mattered, and vanished before sunrise. Daniel. But he wasn't just Daniel anymore. He was Mr. Daniel Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Enterprises. Her client. Their eyes locked. Hers widened in disbelief. His, cool and unreadable, gave nothing away. Not a flicker of recognition. Not a smirk. Just calm professionalism. Ms. Carter, welcome, said a senior executive, completely unaware of the storm silently brewing in the room. This is Mr. Blackwood, our CEO. Amelia nodded stiffly, barely able to breathe. Pleasure, she managed, her voice far too soft. Daniel gave the faintest nod, his face carved from stone. No mention of that night. No acknowledgement at all. If it hadn't been for the memory of his voice whispering her name in the dark, she might have believed she'd imagined the entire thing. She sat, flipping open her sketchbook with trembling hands. The meeting began. Designs were presented. Campaign ideas floated. Questions asked, answers given. On the surface, everything unfolded as expected. But underneath the table, Amelia's mind was a whirlwind. How was she supposed to focus when the man who had kissed her with reckless intimacy now stared at mock-ups of her logos like they were nothing more than business assets? To her surprise, he said little. When he did speak, his tone was measured and distant. He offered constructive feedback, never once letting anything personal slip through. It was like a wall had come down, a thick, impenetrable wall, and Amelia wasn't sure if she was being protected or kept out. When the meeting wrapped up, she packed her things quickly. As she stood to leave, she felt his gaze again. Not sharp. Not cold. Just there. Like he was watching but refusing to act. She walked out of the conference room with her head high, her thoughts spinning. One thing was clear, she needed this job far more than she needed closure. And if he was going to pretend like that night had never happened? Fine. She would play along. But in the back of her mind, one question lingered like a spark waiting to catch fire: why hadn't he said anything? The days that followed felt like walking through an electric storm. The office air, usually sterile and professional, now hummed with something deeper, something charged. Every time Amelia stepped into a room with Daniel, the unspoken tension between them threatened to unravel her composure. Their interactions remained strictly professional. They reviewed design drafts, discussed campaign goals, exchanged polite nods in hallways. But beneath that polished surface was a current neither could control. In meetings, their eyes met a second too long. In elevators, the silence pressed in like a weight, neither daring to speak, neither willing to look away. It wasn't just attraction anymore, it was the memory of something real, something that had happened once and, despite the circumstances, lingered just beneath the skin. Daniel, ever the composed CEO, kept his demeanor locked tight. He said little outside of work talk. But now and then, something slipped, a glance that lingered too long on her lips, a hesitation before he turned away. Once, as they reviewed a proposal, he leaned slightly closer and murmured, "You surprised me, Amelia." She looked up, startled. "Excuse me?" He simply smiled, thin and unreadable, and turned the page like he hadn't said anything at all. Those moments left her spinning, caught between professionalism and a pulse that quickened every time he entered the room. She tried to stay grounded, reminding herself she had worked too hard to get here. Her designs were good, damn good. And she wouldn't let a confusing night or a complicated man shake her. Still, doubt crept in. Especially after what she overheard. She had returned to the office late one evening to retrieve her tablet. The halls were quiet, the lights dimmed. As she approached the corner near Daniel's office, hushed voices caught her attention. She paused, instinct telling her to keep moving, but curiosity rooting her in place. "She's different," Daniel's voice said. "This isn't the same." A woman's voice responded, sharp and cautious. "You said that last time. And look where it got you. You can't afford another scandal, Daniel." "Not now." There was a pause, then a heavy sigh from Daniel. "I know." Amelia's breath hitched. She backed away quietly, heart thudding. She didn't hear the rest. She didn't need to. As she stood in the elevator moments later, descending alone, her thoughts spiraled. What had happened before? Was she just another chapter in a story that always ended badly? The pieces didn't quite fit. Daniel's distance. His occasional warmth. The guarded expression he wore like armor. It all hinted at a past he wasn't ready to share, and a present she might be walking into blind. By the time she reached the street, the city lights blurring behind her, one thing was clear: this was no ordinary client relationship. And Daniel Blackwood was no ordinary man. But if he had secrets, so did she. And it was only a matter of time before both came crashing to the surface. The day had been long, the kind that leaves the office buzzing even after hours. Amelia had just finished presenting her latest design concepts to the executive team. She gathered her materials, ready to make a swift exit, when Daniel's voice cut through the room. "Amelia," he said, calm but firm, "could you stay for a moment?" Her heart skipped. She turned, careful to keep her expression neutral. "Of course." The others filtered out, their footsteps fading into the hallway. Now it was just the two of them, again. Daniel stood by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out over the city. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, more personal. "I'd like to talk. Outside of all this," he gestured vaguely to the boardroom. Amelia hesitated. Every instinct told her to keep her distance, to keep things clean and professional. But the look in his eyes, earnest, almost uncertain, caught her off guard. She nodded. Later that evening, they met at a discreet, dimly lit restaurant nestled on a quiet street far from the noise of downtown. No assistants. No pretense. Just a table for two in a quiet corner, a flickering candle between them. Daniel didn't waste time. "I knew who you were the moment you walked into that conference room," he admitted, his gaze steady. "I just didn't know how to react." Amelia leaned back, processing. "So you pretended we were strangers?" "I didn't want to put you in a position. Or jeopardize your work. But I couldn't stop thinking about you, not after that night." She studied him, unsure whether to believe the vulnerability in his voice. This man, polished, guarded, powerful, wasn't the same one she'd met at the bar. And yet, in this quiet moment, he was. They talked. Not about deliverables or timelines, but about life. Her dreams of starting her own design firm, his complicated journey from inherited wealth to executive responsibility. It was the first time he truly let her in, cracks forming in the armor he usually wore so easily. Dinner passed in a blur. As they walked out into the night, a cool breeze swept through the empty street. Daniel turned to her. "I don't believe in accidents," he said, his tone soft but certain. "That night, you and me, it wasn't random. Not to me." He reached out, gently touching her hand. It was a brief moment, but it lingered longer than it should have. Amelia didn't pull away. But she didn't respond either. Her mind was a whirlwind, logic and emotion at war. He gave a small nod, stepping back. "Good night, Amelia." She stood there, rooted to the spot, watching him disappear into the night. And as the quiet wrapped around her like a question, she asked herself the one thing she wasn't sure she wanted the answer to. Was this the start of something real, or just another beautiful mistake? Amelia sat on the edge of her bed, laptop glowing in the dim light of her apartment. She couldn't sleep, not after the dinner with Daniel. Something about his words had stuck with her, echoing long after he walked away. "I don't believe in accidents." Maybe not. But if that night wasn't an accident, what was it? Curiosity clawed at her. She typed his name into the search bar. Daniel Blackwood. Pages of headlines appeared in seconds. Beneath the polished exterior was a life messier than he let on. Rumors of a broken engagement to a tech heiress. Whispers of boardroom politics. A history of avoiding long-term commitments. There were photos of him with models, reports of private jets and charity galas, and beneath it all, a pattern. A man who built walls. High ones. Amelia stared at the screen, uneasy. The next morning, the office buzzed with quiet tension. Daniel wasn't there. His absence spoke louder than words. His assistant avoided eye contact, offering only a cryptic, "He's dealing with something internal." Then the whispers started. A boardroom betrayal. Someone from the inside gunning to take his place. Stockholders panicking. Amelia tried to focus, but her thoughts kept drifting to him. Alone. Under attack. And, oddly enough, trusting her. That evening, just as she was about to pour herself some tea, there was a knock at her door. She opened it. And there he was. Daniel looked nothing like the CEO who commanded rooms with a glance. He was rumpled, shadows under his eyes, his usual confidence stripped away. "Can I come in?" he asked softly. Amelia hesitated only a second, then stepped aside. Inside, he sank onto her couch, head in his hands. "They're trying to vote me out," he said. "Someone I considered a friend. I don't know who I can trust anymore." His voice cracked at the edges. Raw. Real. "Why come here?" she asked. He looked up. "Because when everything else feels fake, you don't." She sat beside him, the silence between them thick but not uncomfortable. For the first time, Amelia saw him not as the untouchable CEO or the mystery man from the bar, but just a man. Tired. Cornered. Human. They talked. Really talked. About the pressure, the loneliness, the masks people wore. He confessed things she hadn't expected, and for once, she didn't feel like just another face in his day. She felt seen. Needed. And yet, a question tugged at the back of her mind: why her? Was it convenience? Desperation? Or something deeper? The night wore on. He didn't ask to stay. She didn't offer. But when he left, there was something unspoken between them. Not love. Not yet. But a spark. A beginning. And maybe, just maybe, the first crack in Daniel Blackwood's perfectly constructed world. The storm hit faster than anyone could have predicted. Amelia was at her desk when the news broke. The headline blared across every media outlet: "Whistleblower leaks confidential Blackwood Enterprises documents, CEO Daniel Blackwood under investigation." The office was in chaos. Phones rang off the hook, and the atmosphere grew thick with tension. It wasn't just Blackwood Enterprises on the line, it was everything Daniel had built, the empire of wealth, influence, and power. And it was all crumbling under the weight of an internal leak. The paparazzi were relentless. They swarmed outside Daniel's mansion, their cameras snapping with every glimpse of his face. Amelia's phone buzzed incessantly, but it was the photo that stung most, the one from the gala, where she and Daniel had shared that moment of vulnerability, smiling together under the bright lights. Now, it was all over the tabloids, plastered everywhere. Her heart sank. The storm wasn't just hitting him, it was hitting her too. Calls from clients flooded in. One by one, they pulled away, citing the negative attention surrounding her association with Daniel. Her reputation, once solid and untouchable, now hung by a fragile thread. The whispers about her choices were loud enough for her to hear, even through the thick walls of her apartment. It was too much. Frustrated and heartbroken, Amelia stormed into Daniel's office that evening. He was pacing, as usual, but the usual arrogance was gone. His face, usually a picture of control, was now marked with worry and regret. She didn't give him the chance to speak first. "How could you let this happen?" Her voice was sharp, the anger that had been building for days spilling out. "You're being investigated, Daniel. People's lives are being ruined because of whatever mess you're tangled in, and now I'm being dragged into it too. I didn't ask for this." Daniel opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. He stepped toward her, his voice soft. "Amelia, please. This isn't what I wanted." "None of this, you think this is just about you," she cut him off, shaking her head. "This is my career, my life. You were a distraction I didn't need, but I let myself get caught up in it. And now? Now I'm paying for it. My clients are backing out, the press is all over me, and I don't even know who I am anymore in all of this mess." She backed away, her chest tight. "I can't do this, Daniel. I can't be part of your chaos. Daniel reached out, but she took a step back, out of his reach. His eyes begged her to stay, but Amelia couldn't find the strength to hold on. The tears she'd kept buried were threatening to spill over as she turned and walked away. That night, Amelia sat alone in her apartment, staring at the framed photo of her and Daniel from the gala. She had once thought that maybe, just maybe, there was more to their connection than a fleeting moment. But now, with everything unraveling around her, she wondered if she'd ever feel safe again. Safe from the storm he had brought into her life. Safe from the mess they'd both created. She stared at the photo, unsure whether it was the last memory she'd keep, or the first of many regrets. Weeks passed in the aftermath of the scandal. Daniel had stepped down as CEO of Blackwood Enterprises temporarily, retreating from the public eye as the company navigated the chaos. The news had died down, but the consequences lingered. Daniel's absence left a hole in the corporate world, but it also gave him the space to reflect on everything that had gone wrong. Meanwhile, Amelia was rebuilding. She threw herself into her work, picking up new clients and finding her confidence again. She landed a prestigious speaking opportunity at a major design conference, a chance to prove herself on a bigger stage. As she took the podium, sharing her creative vision with an audience of industry leaders, it felt like a new chapter was beginning for her, free from the shadows of her past mistakes. The applause after her speech was loud and genuine, but it was the quiet moment that followed that shook her. In her hotel room that evening, as Amelia unpacked, she found an envelope resting on the table. No fanfare, no pomp, just a simple letter. Opening it slowly, she read the words Daniel had written. He spoke of regret. Of learning from his mistakes. Of stepping back, not to escape, but to figure out what truly mattered. He wrote of the walls he'd built around himself and how, in the end, it was fear, not confidence, that had driven him to keep people at a distance. I've never known how to let someone in, the letter ended. I want to try with you, if you'll let me. Amelia's heart raced as she set the letter down. His words were genuine, but could she trust them? Could she trust him again after everything? A few days later, Amelia found herself at a quiet coffee shop, sipping her drink, lost in thought. It was a place she'd always found peaceful, no distractions, no cameras. Just a moment to herself. But then, the door opened, and Daniel walked in. There was no fanfare, no entourage, just Daniel, wearing a simple shirt and jeans, looking every bit like a man who had been through something. He met her eyes across the room, and for a moment, everything seemed to still. He walked toward her slowly, no airs about him, just a man wanting to speak. Can we start over? He asked, his voice softer than she remembered. Just Daniel and Amelia this time. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. His presence was still magnetic, but this time, it wasn't because of his power. It was something more vulnerable, more real. She hesitated. The memories of their tumultuous journey were still fresh, but something inside her whispered that perhaps this could be a second chance. Not just for him, but for her too. Slowly, she reached for his hand, a quiet agreement passing between them. The story ends there, with them sitting together at that small coffee shop, not with answers, but with the possibility of something new, something real. No promises, just a chance to start over, one step at a time. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support means everything, and it helps me create even more content you'll enjoy. Stay tuned for more twists, turns, and unforgettable moments. See you in the next video.